that I took away from it is that ancestral connection that I didn't know I had. It was just, we found out that connection in Salem, and then when we dug deeper, we found out that connection to the witch trials in Scotland. And I think it just was very confirming for me as somebody who's trying to figure out where they fit under the umbrella of witchcraft. And so it was kind of confirming for me just to have those discoveries.
So did that help to solidify your path and entrench you deeper into the witch aspect of it?
Absolutely. I feel like for myself, I had I'm sure a lot of us have this imposter syndrome, and I was like, well, I've always been interested in this, but is there a spot for me in that world and in maybe so just finding out, I just found like just knowing that historical connection was something that it helped me feel like I had a place in it.
I had a similar experience, and I think you really see in the movie, you meet a lot of different people who position themselves as teachers, some of them position themselves as gurus, and I think when I was a little bit younger on my path, I met a lot of these people, and I learned what I needed from them, but it didn't feel like my whole truth. And so seeking that truth led me home, and even when I went home and I met the Coven of Romanian witches, and I had a very similar experience, I had imposter syndrome. I told them I wasn't raised traditionally, what is my place in this? What is my place in your circle? And it was so beautiful to have them look at me and say, no, we see you, we see this in you, that's why you're here, this is sacred, there's a reason you're here with us. And they invited me into their circle and they initiated me on camera, which was absolutely terrifying and so intimidating, and I had a huge meltdown after it. But yeah, I think just what it taught me was not to look for my own power in other people, and other people can reflect your truth back to you. But I really came from it knowing that I carried the medicine of the lands that I'm from in my body. And it really validated the knowledge that I already had, but maybe didn't believe in as much.
So I like what both of you are saying, because I think that is a message that is important for a larger audience, not any one person anywhere, right? Find your inner truth and follow it. And that's something that's scary and you don't understand it, and sometimes you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be. So I think that's a really good truth. It's kind of good on a larger scale than just specifically here. So I did want to ask another question. Is there a difference between Scotland and Romania in an energy, in a feel, in a mystic kind of way versus Toronto or Oakville or Canada?
So I have been taught that the energy of the land where your ancestors are and a part of that land is very different. So something that was once said to me was, when you go home, and maybe home isn't where you would expect it to be, maybe it's the lands that raised you and held you, maybe it's lands you've never been on yet. But then when you go home and you go to those places where your ancestors are, you almost feel bigger. Like I can express myself better in Romanian than I can in English, because it's almost like the poetry of that worldview is different, and the way that you relate to your surroundings is different. And I think each culture and each language has a magic built into it, and a way of viewing the world and those spirits that's kind of like built into the energy of those things. So I think it is very different energetically. I think the worldview kind of defines the magic that you allow within your life.
Did you carry some of the magic from Romania back to Canada? Did you feel different when you came back?
Absolutely. I think one of the things I was talking about before was going home and wanting to go home to connect, and learning that I carry that in my body already, and that I get to bring that to every space that I'm in here as well.
I would say from my experience in Scotland and certainly going to Stonehenge, it did feel very different, and I liked how you said bigger, because just being around that sacred space where it's just so ancient, and there's just been so many people that have come through there, and just knowing that I had that connection to that space, it definitely did feel very different than how I felt in Canada and Toronto, trying to do my practice there in a city space. But yeah, I also feel like you did that. I brought that back with me, and it's definitely informed my own personal practice when I'm living in Toronto and trying to connect to nature, trying to connect to ancestry. It definitely changed.
So let me ask you this, putting aside the energy of the earth and the connection that you had and going to the different places, what is something that doing this film brought you? What did you learn? What's something new that you learned or something that you connected to more solidly after having done this that maybe surprised you?
I keep wanting to talk about my family connection, but I've kind of already said that, so I guess.
Well, if that's the answer, that's the answer.
Yeah, I think it was just, it changed how I view my own practice, and now I think there was a part that was missing. I was like, it's kind of every time I try and do a ritual or something, it's falling flat, or I feel like it's a bit more just performative in a sense, because I was doubting myself. So now instead of just doing it how I was before, I actually think back to my ancestors, and I really think like, Mary Eastie probably wouldn't stand here today and call herself a witch, certainly not, but I'm sure that how I feel is the way that word was used against her to take her power away now I feel like I connect to that. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna take that back for like her and for other people who were persecuted and had it used against them.
I think one thing that surprised me, Kuyabachi, the forest that we went to, is the world's most highest forest, it's said. And there's a clearing in the center of that forest where nothing will grow. It's a perfect circle, and there's a little fairy tree in that clearing, and it's the only thing that grows in that circle. And it's been that way for a long, long time, like I think since before the 70s. And the forest is huge. You see it in the camera shots. And we ended up in that clearing without trying. We had like a little time to film, and we wanted to be quick, and we somehow ended up in the heart of that forest. And my dad had raised me on stories, especially of that forest, of its portals, of the magic there, of it as a sacred space. And so when I went to those woods, what surprised me was how familiar it felt to me. And that started making me think about the power of our stories and how when we share these stories, we actually are introducing each other to those energies, to those places, to those spirits, to those ways of being. And that was really, really beautiful for me, is going there and feeling like I was home and feeling like I had been there before, even though it was my first physical time in that space.
Nice. I just painted my mom's house. This is related. And it's the same thing when you walk. It was this ugly yellow color before, and now it's this beautiful beige. But every time I walk in, or anybody else walks in, it feels like they've always been there. That color's always been there. So I think that when you're connected, or when something is right and feels right, it just is. There's still a lot of work. I'm just saying. I am going to open it up to the audience in case you have any questions. I have more, but I wanted to see if anybody in the audience had a question. Sure, go ahead.
I was very reticent about seeing this film. I was a little reticent about seeing this film, especially when I saw it on the news. Well, I knew Anne-Marie back nearly 40 years. And I worked at the shop, and succeed. Anyway, but I kept thinking about what Rich Prophet said about like this line that connects all these traditions and that is surrounded by bullshit. And so I ended up sort of relaxed with him eventually. Anyway, my question was, so are you guys both back to sort of doing more of a solitary practice, or are you involved in any groups still, or how is that working?
So at the end of filming, I kind of made a plan for myself in the sense that I was like, okay, I'm going to be involved in this in an informal way. Some of the people that I spoke with, like Anne-Marie, has a very structured, very strict kind of coven, and I just felt like it didn't really fit with me. So I kind of at the end of the film was like, it'd be great if I could have a queer coven where we're kind of like all maybe on the same page and all some of like equals. And it took me a little while, but I did kind of start that. I have one of my friends that we kind of started an official coven just for us right now that we meet on full moons and new moons, and so it's just starting out that way. So it's kind of it's been nice to share practice with someone else after not doing that for so long?
For me, it's a little bit of both, and I think definitely like I've been involved with the Ontario pagan community and people who hold themselves in those positions, and I think, you know, the more you get to know people and the more you get to be in those spaces, I think you start out with a lot of idealism and a lot of, you know, like we're going to create this beautiful world in the way that we want the whole world to be, and people's egos kind of get in the way and disappoint you and disenchant you, and I think that's been really, really hard for me, and I think that's why that traditional structure doesn't necessarily quite like work with me. So still kind of finding that path. I do work in groups sometimes. I work by myself most of the time, but yeah.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Mm-hmm.
Just, can you hear me? Yeah, just for both of you. Thank you for sharing your stories and being fearless about it, because that was like really great to see a whole different lifestyle and people that would be very open to share. When you started the filming, did you know that did you have like a journey intended? Or was it something that evolved during filming? And was it what you expected, or was it because it seemed very revelatory as you were watching it? And it was also, for me, I enjoyed seeing your perspective, the change of perspective as you walked through it. And I don't know if that was the filmmaking or if that was an actual authentic feeling for you. That's my question.
For me, definitely when Rama and I were speaking about being a part of the documentary, she was just hoping to find someone who was very new to their own practice and hadn't really defined it yet and lived like in a city center. So we connected, and that's really all we kind of knew. And I was kind of like worried, I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I going to share? Like, how am I going to do this? And so it just started out, she was like, well, where's your family from? And I'm like, Denmark, Scotland. And then I talked to my mom, who put me in touch with my aunt, who was like our family historian. And so that scene that you see where she tells me about Salem, it was literally, I didn't know she was going to say that. My mom didn't know. Rama didn't know. We were all just like, Kathleen with the timing. Like, it was, wow. So, and then that just spiraled from there. Because, you know, then it was like, okay, well, like, let's see what's going on in Scotland. And we had talked to this one gentleman who they had already planned on introducing me to, Lord Moncrief. But then doesn't it turn out that he has these historic records that they found my family there too? And like, it was just supposed to be me meeting him for the witch's maze. But then it just became more than that. So it was like every step of the way, we're like, okay, what's next? Okay, who else am I related to? You know, so that was all very organic.
Yeah, and I believe in the magic of synchronicity. Like I had no idea what was going to happen, and initially I got called, you know, saying, you know, we want to interview you, a short interview for this movie, and I started talking to Rama, the director, and we ended up talking for an hour and a half, and I just started telling her about all my dad's stories and how I would love to go and see these sacred places, and she said, well, isn't that funny, because we were planning to talk to these witches in Romania, and we were going to go there, but we had no real reason to go there. I just thought they were cool. And she was like, but this is part of your lineage and your tradition, and we weren't expecting to meet you, and I would love to bring you to all of the places from there that these stories, and to meet these women. And so I had absolutely no idea that I would get to practice with them and learn from them, and that was really powerful and intense and beautiful for me.
I think that once you start any, again, I'm going to go back to the general, right? Because there's a lot that can be learned from specifics that can be applied to generals. And I think that once you open yourself up to energy in life and the possibilities, and you're willing to accept that energy in synchronicity, like you said, it shows up in the most unexpected places. So I am going to say one final question for you, and then we're going to let you go. I do have a little message afterwards, though. If you both could just let me know, what is the one thing that you want the audience and audiences in general to take away from this film?
I guess that what I would like audiences to take away from it is a different, more open understanding of the word witch and how that really connects to not only like feminism and like historically, like, you know, how the patriarchy has kind of condemned and use the word witch to disempower certain groups. And to know that it's not this scary thing, like we're not like green-skinned women in the forest cooking children, you know what I mean? So,
Absolutely, Greta.
yeah, I think it's just maybe having, this is a legitimate practice, and it's very spiritual, it's very connected to the land and also ancestry. That's what I think.
I would say what my first teacher said to me, and she said, the only teachers you should follow are the ones that bring you back to your own heart. And like stepping into your own power, like you already carry this knowledge, you carry this wisdom. We all have our ancestry, we all have our traditions, we all have the places we come from, and we know a lot more than we think we know, and we always know what's right and true for us, but we often doubt ourselves. And so that is the magic, that is the power. You step into your own power and your sphere of influence, and so often we see people who do that and we want to be like them, but the reason we want to be like them is because they stand in their power. And so it would be disaligned for us to try to be like them in that way. And we just need to find the beauty in ourselves and really honor and respect ourselves in the way that we do for other people, because sometimes that's a little bit harder.
I think that's beautiful, and that's another theme that's been through this whole festival is being open, being fearless, being vulnerable, being curious about other people so that we're not judging, labeling everybody, right? It doesn't matter who you love or who you are, it's who you are inside and that energy that you carry with you. It's a theme that I have seen throughout this festival in almost every film. So I want to thank you both for sharing and for being so vulnerable today and coming out and spending a little bit of time with us. Thank you very much. Are you doing tarot readings still after today? Okay. All right, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.